Welcome to this episode of The Balanced Mind. Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Kim. How are you?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I'm quite looking forward to this topic today, all about how this season of tax returns and year-end accounts could be affecting people's lives right now. So I think let's start with the first thing is that I was confused. Having worked within industry, I knew that coming up to the year end, at one the business I was in was the 31st of December. It was insane how people just seem to change, which is what happens when we get under stress. And I don't think people realize how they become blunt and they may already be succinct, but it takes it to another level. How you there was no sense of humor, there was no time for frivolity, there was no time for lunch breaks in some cases, particularly as it got closer and closer and closer. And it almost seems like life is just, that's just something that's happening outside of what I'm doing. And actually, I'm not sure some of them were very nice people in that time. And that's just the year-end accounts. Tax season, I'm wondering, does that take the same course? I don't know. Not working within this industry specifically, I can't answer that. What do you think?
I think that I mean, look, the profession that we're in is a deadline-driven profession, and there are
Mm,
deadlines throughout the year when it comes to, you know, um, payroll, VAT returns, management accounts, year-end accounts. We are a profession that's driven by deadlines, and deadlines bring a stress with them. And we can sit here all day long and talk about how you can be more effective when it comes to planning your deadlines and all the rest of it, and we'll probably touch on that in this call. But if you're someone who struggles with that sort of pressure, then it's going to be heightened as you get towards the 31st of January here in the UK
mm,
because there's a big deadline that's laid up there. But I think it's a pressure that is there, can be there all year round. It's a conversation that I have quite a lot with accountants, especially when we're talking with the teams, because I think we have to be honest. This is a job that comes with a degree of stress and pressure.
mm.
There's a lot that we can do to make that better, but the reality is that there are easier jobs out there. So, I have a conversation around some fairly fundamentals here about whether you should be in
Mm.
this profession or not.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes.
and if you some people embrace pressure and embrace stress and embrace deadlines. They sort of
Mm.
it gives them that direction, doesn't it? I was always the kid who left his homework and his dissertations and all the rest of it to the very last minute because that's why I ended up as an accountant. It's because I sort of I guess I needed that pressure. I needed to know you've got to get it done tonight. Um, Other people, I always admire people who can plan themselves much better and get it done much earlier and all the rest of it.
Mm.
But I think, I think it's almost something that's embedded in us how well we deal with that. I don't think it's unique to the 31st of January. It's
Right.
something about it's this wider thing about how do you deal with pressure. Um, and you're dead right, that does impact on some people. And of course, we're a people focused business, so that impacts. This is a pressure that's not unique to the accountant; it's there with the client,
Mm.
and we certainly know that some clients don't respond very well to being
I
under
do
pressure.
not know.
So
So it's a
it's a
universal message, isn't it, really?
yeah, yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think I remember recognizing that people's normal behaviors, so i.e., let's just using our context here of the rest of the year, their normal behaviors became exaggerated during moments of or times of stress. And I'm not talking the odd day here and there or the odd week. I'm talking when it's sustained. And technically, this is for a quarter of the year that these guys are under pressure, isn't it? And that's not a good thing if their response is to sink into overwhelm and stress and worry and their whole demeanor changes because you're right, it doesn't just affect them, it affects the people they work with, their family, their clients, person in Tesco's who's been a bit slow. It just reverberates out. And I think this is where I'm a great believer that it's down to us.
Okay.
I very often say it all starts with you. So it's our responsibility, no one else's. Yes, your client's got the stuff in late, but that's your responsibility too to get them in. Easier said than done. I absolutely get that. Had
Well, I
numerous
mean,
conversations.
I'll give you a personal example from Friday night, which has got nothing to do with 31st January deadline, but certainly is about this pressure and how we respond to it.
Mm,
Because me and Rowena, we'd been out to a concert on Friday night, and I'm in the car park queuing to get out the car park. It's then one of these sort of, I mean, it's a queue park and a car park. And there's only three cars in front of me in the queue, but I'm one of these people who doesn't like queuing. I don't like queuing. So I'm okay because it's one of these with an automated barrier. You can just drive straight out. But for whatever reason, the person, when we joined the queue, there's three cars there. And as we joined the queue, Rowena said to me, "Do you want a love heart?" Because she always has some love hearts in the car. I said, "I'll have one as soon as I'm out in the car park." Fine, that's okay. Um, but then the person at the front of the queue is, for whatever reason, having all sorts of problems getting the barrier to open. And we're sitting there and we're sitting there and we're sitting there. And
right.
I'm not good at that. I don't like that. I want to be out and
No.
driving. And all the time in my mind, the traffic's getting worse and worse outside the car park because
Yeah.
so he said to me, turns to me about probably only 90 seconds later and says, would you, you sure you don't want to love heart? I said, well, I might as well because I'm not going anywhere here. And she went, well, that was a really lumpy response, wasn't it? And I thought, yeah, it was. And it's just because I've
Mm,
allowed myself to get wound up by something that is completely, well, A, it's out of my control, but also, I shouldn't be taking it out on the person sat next to me just because I'm being impatient from what someone who quite innocently is doing three cars ahead of me. But it was just like
yeah.
a mini example of how our behaviour changes for for the circumstance more than anything else, and that's a situation that I shouldn't have allowed. I did apologise. I did get me
Of
sweet.
course.
But,
And that's a good point. I mean, it's those everyday things that are a clue. And you've said before, that patience may not be your strong suit. It's not mine. Get me behind the wheel of a car, and I'm completely somebody different. But I think what I'm getting to here is if this is something that we face, it's first of all being aware of it because we may not even be aware of the change. We did it last year and the year before, and it's become habitual for us. So it's who we are, isn't it? No, it's not. It's so not who you are. But it is understanding what the driver is behind that. There's something going on in your head that is making you well, making life more difficult because actually, at the end of the day, I think that's the thing. It makes your life difficult as well. Because you're right, you were grumpy in the car and you've got a retort back to it, which you would. But if you magnify that day by day, every interaction, suddenly things have started to become more challenging, aren't they? More effort is required.
they are. I think to some extent we use deadlines as an excuse in the profession. We sort of hide behind them because one of the frustrations I have, particularly over the 31st of January deadline, but actually for most of the deadlines, is that these deadlines are not surprises. In most
No,
cases,
they're
this
not.
isn't something that's just crept up on us. If you take the self-assessment deadline, 31st of January, self-assessment came in the mid 1990s, 1994, 95, something like that.
All right.
Yeah, we've had it around for a long, long time.
Oh, 20 years
So
odd.
so yeah, well, quite. So why is it still a problem? Why is it that
Mhm.
we go into so many firms of accountants who are still faced with a pile of work to do between now and the end of January? Because we know last year was a problem. We know the year before was a problem. We know that our people got stressed last year, and we know who the problem. Why is that a problem again this year? It's not that the deadline has changed. So I think it's you know we sort of hide behind the fact that we have this single deadline by which to get everything done. But the reality is that we have 9 months, 10 months to address that problem. And if it was a problem the year before and the year before and the year before and the year, why haven't we fixed it? So I think it's one of those things that yes, we can talk a lot about how we can um, we can ease the pressure. We can, there's a lot that we can do in terms of systems and pricing structures and managing
Mm,
clients and managing team members and creating targets and encouraging performance. There's loads and loads of things that we can do, and there's lots and lots of advice out there and calls like this that will go through those. My fundamental issue is why haven't we done that? Because those tips were there the year before and the year before and the year before. So I think there's something deeper than just the problems associated with the deadline. And it's the same with, you know, VAT quarters, payroll quarters, tax year end, payroll year end. These aren't surprises. We know they're coming up. So why have we not fixed it? I think it's almost like that's the conversation that is it needs to be had, as opposed to what can we do to fix it? It's like why haven't we done that already?
mm. And it's a good one because one of the challenges I know personally and can see by the time a client gets to come and see me, they're already in and I'm going to use the word pain, but it doesn't mean physical pain. It can be emotional or mental pain. They're already in trouble, but they've sat with it. They haven't done anything about it. They've known about it. Nothing I say is really that new. I may frame it differently. I may put some more science behind it, but in the essence of it, they know what the problem is. They may not know the root, but they know that they are part of the problem, and they just don't do it. And I guess this is where, for me, the brain is really not serving us because it will only deal with things when it's just too painful. So consequently, we sit with stuff. I mean, you could call it your comfort zone. I don't think that's entirely right in all cases, but they just sit with it because they can manage it. They've learned a technique to get through it. I hear a lot about time management things, and we did a time thing earlier this year. And whilst I absolutely understand they can be very valuable, they still need you to do it. And consequently, if that's the case, there's still an issue that you've not resolved. It's a sticking plaster effect. Now, I don't know what it would take necessarily for people to get to do something about it before it becomes painful. But wouldn't it be amazing if we could?
Yeah, I think this is where we can use a deadline as a positive because if I talk about the hamster wheel that accountants are on, then my guess is most people on the call will just get it. It's that constant daily pressure to
Yes.
deal with stuff, and the challenge that people face with that is if you're gonna address that, you've got to be prepared to step off it, and step off it means that immediately you've got carnage because there's things flying left, right, and centre. But you've got to be brave
Yes.
enough to step off,
Mm,
address that, and then get back into it. When you're dealing with a deadline, I think it's slightly different because if you look at 31st of January as a deadline, the reality is that where we are right now in the weeks leading up to that is where we are. So therefore, we've just got to get that done. There's
mm.
X hundred tax returns still to be done, X number of accounts still to be done. You just got to get them done. But the moment you're past 31st of January, you've got a clean board. So now we haven't got to step off a hamster wheel because we're already off it in terms of the tax returns.
Right, yeah.
So that's the opportunity to go, right, that was carnage or that was great, whatever. However, that the current tax year is gone. We sit there, maybe not 1st of February, but fairly close thereafter and go, right, what are we going to do different now? Because the next time we're in this situation is 10 months away, 11 months away.
Mhm.
So we don't have to be there. I think it's different. There isn't a hamster wheel to step off. The hamster wheel actually stops in terms of tax returns 31st of January.
Mm,
Great. Draw breath. Now what can we do different? And I think we should use that as an opportunity. It's the same when we're talking about these other deadlines, whether it be back quarter deadlines or whatever. The moment the deadline's gone by, we have a blank board. So what have we learned? How are we going to do it differently next time round? I think it's a different psychological challenge to the general one of we're really, really busy every day. Yeah, and there's new stuff flying around every day. How do we get off to address
exactly.
that? I think we can actually flip the deadlines around and go, all right, let's make this a positive. Let's first of all, it's a target to achieve. So let's hit that. And then the moment we've achieved that target, right,
Mm.
now what do we do different?
Yeah, I like what you say there about always being busy. And that is something that I found when I was talking about the time seminar that we did, the time webinar or the two that I've attempted to run, too busy, or I haven't got time. It feels like
Mm.
an excuse because there's a decision required. There's a commitment requirement that just I haven't got time to deal with that right now. So there is a busyness that's going on that, and I'm not sure if I'm honest, that I can give you a specific what I think that might be, but it's a general busyness that's come about. I was talking to who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody. I went along to meet a group of people who trained in a similar modality as me, and they were talking about how clients were talking about they couldn't afford to see her, but then in the next breath was talking about the holiday they've got, or the new car that they've got, or something else that they've invested in. So actually, it's not even that. It's a choice that they're making almost to what they're doing with their time. And if we look at it from that aspect, it's a choice. It comes back to them. It's what they're doing individually. Yes, if they're in part of a group, that may be different, but it all starts with us. And if we start to think about how we're using our time, what's driving us, what's filling our time, I bet half the time we don't know what we do with it. Scrolls on Instagram, checks out YouTube. What's on the news? What's the weather doing? Hello. So maybe that's getting a bit closer to what the issue is, because when you come to that period of reflection, what are you reflecting on? What you did well, great. It's what you did. What didn't you do well? It's what you didn't do. And so we want to go beyond that and go underneath it, I think. And one of the things actually is quite interesting. I've just written another article on habits. Maybe that's where to start. What are your habits? What are your habits that you're putting into place that gives you the results, and which ones aren't serving you? I'm wondering if that's a good one to go with.
Yeah, I think as human beings, I think we're rather struggling with the world that we're in. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a group of accountants the other day, and the conversation was around tech and how accountants use tech and all the rest of
Oh,
it. And I
yeah.
said to them, if you think about it, I mean, I came into this profession over 40 years ago now. If I'd done a sci-fi movie 40 years ago that had all of the tech developments that we have today, so
Mm,
it had the internet and it had mobile phones and it had self-drive cars and it had all of the domestic appliances and all of the systems and processes that we have today. What would the people be doing in that movie? Well, they wouldn't be working like we're working today. They'd be on the beach and they'd be doing it would be look about how we've used all of this to free our time up. But the
mm.
reality is we're probably working at least as hard today, if not harder than we were 40 years ago.
I think
So
harder.
yeah, and so what's it's almost yeah, okay, part of that is because I don't think tech has necessarily delivered on all its promises when it comes to making our life easier.
Yeah.
There are issues around that. But equally, I think part of the problem is that as humans, are we developing as quickly as the tech is developing? We how
Mm.
long has the conversation been around about work-life balance?
Oh,
It
yes.
yeah, and so what are we doing about it? Because it should be a massive feature now. And I think there is this thing about whatever happens in the world around us. Yeah, it's almost like there's a universe outside us, but there's a universe inside us as well, which is our brain and our heart and who we are as people. And maybe that we don't focus because we don't focus enough on that bit. We focus on all of the change external to us. We focus on learning new systems and new processes and getting used to AI and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And we're ignoring the fact that the universe inside us isn't particularly changing that much. And maybe that's where this partly, I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, because things should be getting better. Why aren't they getting better? Why don't,
Yes.
but also it's like, okay, well, that's the issue because we spend time looking outwards and improving and getting better and more efficient and more effective, whatever. What about the inside? We've done all of that stuff on our physical health. We're all aware these days that we need to be more physically healthy. But it's this stuff, isn't it? It's not, it's
Mm.
it's still this idea that well, that's I am who I am. That's just me. That's just me. It's that sort of phrase. You wouldn't accept that way. You wouldn't go externally. Oh well, that's just the system. You go, we need a better system. And yet for ourselves, we go, yeah, that's just me.
You're right. We just accept who we are, and I don't know whether it's the way our society has evolved, but once you leave school, it's almost like you're that's it for your formal learning, and any of that. I love the way you said the universe inside. I'm liking that. Thank you, because it is that inside world, and it is a smorgasbord is of everything we've ever experienced, everything we've ever learned, every interaction we've had, and it contains it all, just not consciously. And I think that's that idea of, and I have mentioned this about upgrading our internal software, because if it's not working, why are we sitting with it? Because
Mm.
it's not painful enough, because it's not causing us a problem, because we've got workarounds to do it, just like when your system's not working, part of it, you'll if it's not working, it's easier to put in a fix than it is to find out what the problem is and just get on with it. And I don't know whether there's that they they don't want to do that, whether it's, and some people won't, and that's okay, that's their choice. But we want to talk to those who are wanting to change their business, they want to move forward, they want the success. These people are ready. And whether it's an understanding thing, or whether it's I don't know what to do thing, or something else, I don't know. But you're absolutely right. That inner software needs to be looked at and understood. What were the parameters that were put in place that's driving this busyness, this no time to do anything, no time to stop and think? I mean, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of people who don't have time to take time out and think about their business, the strategizing, which we're going to be talking about in another podcast, aren't we? The goals and objectives that they may have. I
Yeah,
just feel that there is something there, and it's how can we help them recognize that it does all start with them. It is their inner universe. It is a way of actually making massive changes. I don't think people understand the change that they make within will radiate out everywhere, and the benefits of those changes, the positive elements of those changes, will be felt not necessarily consciously, but you'll suddenly people start to deal with you differently. So, I talked earlier about, the idea that, people are picking up all the time on the way you're feeling. So when you get stressed, you may not realize it, but others will. They'll spot it before you do. They'll know that you're not in a good shape. Or avoid her, she's not in a good mood today. Or avoid him, he's grumpy. Still we know about it. But what if we could take control of that emotion, that sense of, things are really busy right now. It's all so busy. What if we took control of that and changed it to, there's a lot on, but I've got this. There's a lot on, and actually I'm going to be more focused on what needs to be done. I
yeah.
don't know, but
It's
I've
it's
wittered there, I think.
well, I think it's back to that power of the deadline again, because
Mm,
on the in the lead up to the deadline, there's a lot on. You've got to get it done. That's the reality of it. Find a way to get it done. The moment you pass the deadline, there's nothing on, not in the context of that particular deadline. So that's when you have this opportunity. And I think we waste those opportunities continually throughout the year, because we don't go, right, that's now done. I'm happy with it, brill, well done team, or I'm not happy with that. What are we going
mm,
to do to change it? Yeah, but instead we just dive into the next deadline. Yeah, and it's that if we're going to change something, fundamentally we are the ones who are going to change it. Yeah, if our tax return process hasn't gone well this year, well, on the 1st of February, we have the same clients, the same team, the same
yeah.
systems. So the first starting point is, all right, this is where I am, this is what I've got. In most cases, you don't need to invest a penny to change it. You just need to change how you make use of the time and the resources that you've already got.
Mm,
So yeah, if those clients were being the pain in the neck, what are you going to do about them? Those team members who are maybe not, doing things as you instructed them to do last year, who aren't staying on top of their targets, what are you going to do about it? it's always going to come back to what are you going to do about it? That's the starting point. It doesn't mean to say that we're the ones who then have to do all the work. And I mean, that's the area that we make. We then sort of take more and more on our shoulders. But if the system for, for whatever year we're in now, 24 and 25, hasn't worked very well,
Mm.
what are you going to do about it? Because nobody else is going to do anything. A client's not going to come to you and say, I'm really sorry, I wasn't very helpful last year. I'm going to be much better this year. That's not going to happen. So what are
No.
you going to do to make that change? And in
Mm.
most cases, it's not spend money. It's just drive a clearer message or change an approach or something. But it's always going to start from you. And it's a human fix. It's not, you've got the software, you've got the tracking systems. Yes, we can tinker with those to improve it, but that's not the fundamental reason why your deadline is a problem. Your deadline is a problem because it sounds a bit brutal, but you've allowed it to become a problem.
Right.
Either because you've accepted a piece of work in the first place that you should have said no to,
Mm.
or because the way that that work has been done hasn't been done in the way that your brain on day one said, oh, yeah, we can do it this way. And then it's not worked out that way.
Yeah.
No one's going to change that but you. So just embrace that. Go, great. This is because, from 1st of February, you are the person in control. You're the person who can say, we're going to change this. But also, of course, you've then got to be the person who, I don't know if it's the right word to use or not, but you're the person who's going to enforce that change.
Mm. So I love what you're saying, and I think you're absolutely right. So asking some really um, hard questions, some challenging questions of ourselves in that aftermath of the deadlines. Is there anything they can do now, though? I don't know. Is that possible?
But in terms of getting to the deadline, I mean,
Mm,
it's a very non-scientific answer, but in practical terms, it's all about your to-do list. You need to know what you've still got to do because off the back of that, you can then prioritize it.
mm,
These are the tax returns that are outstanding. Where's the quick wins? I mean, I was with a firm on Friday and they were listed, they've got something like 300 odd tax returns outstanding, but of those, about 120 just needed signing off. Great, let's spend a day getting those out. Yeah, because then your
yeah.
mind's not thinking I've got 300 left. Your mind's going, I've got 280 left. Yeah.
Mm,
Which are the ones that we can just get done now? Which are the ones where we need to push for a bit more work? You talked about the word control earlier, and that's the key thing to this. Whatever the situation, the moment, we're going to fix it by getting ourselves back in control.
yeah.
To-do lists are your way of getting back in control. However you do it, whether it's a scrap of paper or whether it's on your practice management system or whether you're using Trello, or whatever you're using, get onto to make sure this is the picture. You might not want to look at it, but this is the
No.
picture, right? What can we do? What are where's the easy wins? What have got to be the priorities? What are the things that we're going to have to park? What are the things that I need to make an honest decision on? But the moment we start making those decisions instead of just reacting to what happens every day, you start to bring it back under control. And the reality is, you have done this every year for the last 10, 20, 30 years, depending on how long you've been in practice. So you can do it. You can do it. So let's, having discussed what happens 1st of Feb, let's now park that, other than stick it in your diary for whenever date and diary in February, we're going to sit down and reassess. Let's
Mm,
now focus on achieving those 31st January deadlines, which means every single day we go, right, what we're going to determine what work we do today. Who are we going to be working on today? What are we going to do today? What are our priorities? Let's make them proactive decisions rather than let's wait to see who dumps something else in our lap.
yeah. Sounds some good tips there, some of which I'm sure the listeners will know about, but just need to be reminded
Mm.
because it's very easy to get sidetracked by the work coming through. And unfortunately, the brain will focus on that list of how many you've got outstanding. And it can be quite challenging. Thank you for today. That's been insightful. And certainly from my perspective, given me some thoughts to take forward, because I need to make it clear I'm not perfect. But having been a project manager, I am perfect at managing it. No, I'm not. But I'm better at managing it than most. I understand what those deadlines are like when you start to drop things and say, oh, that's not so important. You suddenly start to become more discerning, I think, about what you can get away with. Clients who don't get their stuff in until lastminute.com. Sorry, but I told you needed to get it in at a certain time and you didn't. And you just let them slide where you can. Obviously not the ideal sort of situation, but they might not be great paying clients anyway, because if they did like you, they'd have got it in sooner, wouldn't they? Quite brutal like that.
I
Lovely.
agree.
Thank you very much. You agree? Oh, good. I'm
Absolutely.
not
Absolutely
not
agree.
being heartless. Oh.
Yeah.
It's not my normal standing, but sometimes the people who come to see me, they're my clients, and I'm their advocate. I'm like, no, don't let people treat you like that. Stop it. Stand up. Let them go.
Yeah, and I know it's a different call, but it's your business. It works your way. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, love it. A great ending to a great podcast here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And we've got some great podcasts coming up, not least of all the fact that we are going to be talking about changing the mundane mindset and setting goals and objectives. So please do join us then. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.